Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So sorry for the slight few minutes delay. We had some internet issues. Those dang gremlins. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Everyone, let's give a nice round of applause for Ananya Devarajan. In conversation, we have DJ Jackson. Of course, we are celebrating the day after release of the KISMAT Connection. Ananya is an undergraduate at the University of California, Irvine, pursuing a major in neurobiology and behavior with a minor in English. Now, I just overheard something that I want you to elaborate on. What did you do early so you can make sure you can make your events for this book?
Oh, yes. So I actually contacted the Dean of Bio-Sci at UCI, and I was like, hey, I have a book deal. I'm going to be on tour. Can I take my final exams a week early? And he was like, that's the weirdest question anyone has ever asked me. Of course you can. So all my finals were taken last week. I'm done. I'm officially over with college. I just need to graduate this weekend. Thank you.
And I can definitely say there's probably people like, can I take it late? Like, probably you're the first one that he's heard of. It sounds like, can I do it early?
Yeah, it was.
How prepared were you to take it early?
Not at all. I can talk about this in more detail, but I have like my grad school plans figured out after college, so I'm already in my very much like senioritis mode. So taking it early was just a matter of getting it over with.
Just get out of the way. Like the majority of her characters, she is a second-generation Indian American young adult. Her love for storytelling began on Wattpad, where she grew her audience as a featured author, and she later went on to win the first place in TeenPit 2019. Excellent. DJ is at DJ Reads Books on Instagram. His passion is diverse books from BIPOC and or queer authors. He is a co-host of the hashtag Queer Bookstagrammer Tour. He's also passionate about literacy as an educator and parent. Thank you so much, DJ, for being here in conversation. And thank you so much, Ananya.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take it away. For everyone who is here live and virtual, we'll have an audience Q&A section after the discussion, especially those virtual people. Get those questions ready because I want to see some good questions and get those questions brewing in your brains here. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, Ananya, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Wow, loaded question. Where do I start with that? So a little bit about me. Obviously, I'm a senior at UC Irvine. I'm graduating this Sunday. I'm really excited about it. And I think my introduction kind of like handled a lot of like my personal life in that, or my academic life, that is. But obviously, I've been writing books since I was 6 years old. So this is a funny story, but I actually did tell my grandparents in India when I was 6 that when I grew up, I wanted to be a HarperCollins author. And they were all like, yeah, of course, like we support your dreams. But no one thought I would actually become one 13 years later. And so, when I got the book deal at 19 and I had the honor of calling my grandparents and telling them, they were like, oh, we knew it from the start. And they were actually like true, like they did know it from the start. So that's what like writing has meant to me. But I don't know if that answers your question about telling me about myself.
Yeah, I just wanted you to say a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because this is amazing. This is your debut book.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that you've been writing since you were 6 is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I just like have always had a ton of stories in me. So I, write whenever I have a big feeling, whenever I have a big emotion, whenever I have a big thing happen. And that's just always how I've coped with those things. And so then growing up, it only made sense that I would eventually also write a book because I have too many feelings.
There's nothing wrong with that. Speaking of feelings, tell us about your book. I want to know more about the KISMAT Connection. So do they.
Yes. So KISMAT Connection is a young adult romance novel. And of course, it's my debut. It features fake dating and these two Indian American childhood best friends where one of them, Arjun Mehta, has been in love with his best friend Madhuri Iyer since they were like kids, like 4 or 5 years old. He's known that she was the one for him. But she has never really allowed herself time to think about love beyond her school or her academics or her family. She's really like secure in her happy place. And so she gets this astrology reading in the like beginning of her senior year from her mother. And it tells her that she has to get out of that comfort zone. Otherwise, she's going to crash and burn. And so she kind of combats that and decides to fight against the universe, against destiny, and against her mother. That's like a big part of this book by fake dating Arjun, not knowing that he's been in love with her this whole time.
Yes, speaking of it, as I was listening to the audiobook, I like one thing I was amazing how like once they came up with the plan to fake date and they have an expiration date.
Yes, they do have an expiration date. There was a reason that I put that down. Their fake dating is not the traditional fake dating where they have a contract and like, we're going to go on a few dates. Madhuri is a really STEM-focused individual, so she actually creates a relationship fake dating experiment with like hypotheses and controlled variables and pretty much anything you would find in a science lab, right? And with that includes an expiration date, because laboratory experiments don't go on forever. That's not how they work. And so in order for her to do her data collection and, do the statistical analysis and get the results, she needed to end it. And her plan was to never take a man with her to college. And so that was why their expiration date was graduation.
Which is interesting because, as you said, he actually has loved her since they were like little kids. But she's using him as part of the experiment.
Yes.
I wonder how that will end up because I personally, like, if I was like in this book or if I was in a situation like that, I'd be like, do you realize how much I love you? Now you're just playing with my heart here.
Yeah, so that's something a lot of people have felt passionately about on the internet. Like that scheme of this relationship, people have had a lot of feelings about it, but here's how I'll defend it, right?
Okay.
They're both not perfect people.
Of course.
And I think sometimes people look at Arjun and he's so nice and so sweet and so forgiving that you forget that he did not tell Madhuri how he's felt. And that he has kept that inside of him for a very long time, kind of just waiting for her to change her mind without telling her, communicating what that really means to him, to her. And so not to make excuses for Madhuri, because she is really mean for just like bringing him into this experiment. And like, I think that's just her being like very blissfully socially unaware. She does not understand, or I don't even think she thinks that anyone could love her romantically. She like has that kind of like deep-seated thing of like, well, why would anyone love me? Like everything that I have going for me is my intelligence, and I'm okay with that. But like besides my family, I don't really have anyone. And so like that's her mindset. And I think that insecurity plays into why she's like, I would never, like Arjun would never love me because what is there to love about me? And that's how their relationship kind of unfolds, where like Arjun starts to get more vocal and more communicative. And in response, Madhuri starts explaining to him why she's so guarded. And I think that's why they kind of work a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that as I was reading it. And I do like that. And in addition to that, I like how Arjun, one thing he did after like, because there's like, it's not really a spoiler because it's the beginning of the book, but he plays lacrosse. And so he gets a head injury. And so she goes there with him to talk with him. And he's like, I was looking for you. And she was like, well, I was here. I had the sign ready.
Mm-hmm.
And then like after they came up with their scheme, one thing that he did was I think he blessed her mom's feet. And
Yeah.
I was like, wow. And mom was like, okay, I like this. I like you. So I, as a reader, I'm like, okay, I like him. Let's see how much she's worth what he has to offer.
Yeah.
Because if he does that, like, come on, the feet. If he does that with the feet, that means a lot.
Yeah, it's a big like cultural thing, I think. Like when you show a high level of respect for an elder, when you want to be a part of their family and you're willing to get their blessing, right? Like that's a very intimate thing. You do like go and touch their feet. And Arjun is also raised very culturally aware. There's not a lot of Indian teenagers who do that now. It's like, I don't really go and touch elders' feet. And I'm like not saying you should, right? But that's something that's important to Arjun. But I also like that scene because it's the first moment in the book where Madhuri looks at him and she actually does have like a romantic feeling for him. Because I think she even says in the book, this is the first time anyone has seen me through the lens of my culture.
Yes.
And it feels nice to be understood on such a deep level. And I think that's why I like that scene, because yes, Arjun is doing this incredible thing because he loves Madhuri and you want Madhuri to deserve that. But Madhuri is also like finally opening herself up to this like kind of idea of you can be loved by someone from the same culture as you. That's not a cliche. That's not a stereotype. That could be just as romantic as something big and flashy.
Yes, I like that. It was perfect.
Thank you.
So question, why lacrosse? Because Arjun does play lacrosse. Why did you choose lacrosse of all the other sports?
Yeah, so actually I was explaining this a little bit to you. There's two parts to this. I grew up watching Teen Wolf. That was my favorite TV show. Growing up as a 15-year-old, Dylan O'Brien, shirtless, playing lacrosse in high school was the thing that I wanted to watch every day at 5 p.m. And that kind of got like really deep set into my brain because then 2 years later when I wrote this book, I was like, do you know what makes a man attractive? Lacrosse. So like that's how that happened. But also I think the reason I picked lacrosse is I grew up in Connecticut for 12 years. So a good portion of my life was there. Actually 8 years. But I was there for a very long time. And in Connecticut, it's very different from California.
Right.
There are no water sports. Like the jocks are not water polo players. They're not swimmers. They are lacrosse players.
Yes.
Yes.
Or like even like my school didn't even have a football team. Like Avon High School, or they did have a football team. It wasn't great, but we were known for our lacrosse. And so that also comes from lived experience of being on the East Coast. Even though these kids are in Southern California, where the book is set, I still wanted to bring in that piece of my old home into this book.
Cool, and I felt that because now I'm like, I want to like, are there any leagues I can watch? Because it sounded very interesting, like the way like that you wove that into the story. Because I'm like lacrosse, because you never hardly ever see lacrosse in a book. You usually see soccer or football.
Football.
Yeah.
Typically, that's the one. I was on Wattpad, right? So football.
So football. So yeah, it was great how lacrosse was there. I really like that. So, what is your journey to becoming a writer? You said that you started writing when you were 6 years old, but like, how did you get from 6 to now to become a writer?
Great question. Are you guys in for like a good like story? Because I feel like there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. So obviously I started when I was 6, but I wasn't writing novels, I promise. I was not some weird prodigy kid. I was writing short stories, and I was writing like stories about like snakes that swallowed mouses and like things like that. I would send it to my grandparents in India, and they were like, this is like the next great American novel. We love you so much. So a big part of my writing journey is how supportive my family has been of me, and like really making sure that I bring out the arts in my life all the time, right? So then that turned into me starting to write on a little bit more of a professional level. And what I mean by that is I started reading these like books like The Clique, Gossip Girl, Pretty Little Liars when I was like 12 years old.
Wow.
And those were the books that stuck with me. I loved chick lit. I loved teen fiction. I loved love stories and just like people being dramatic. That was my thing even as a kid. And I remember thinking, I want to be like these authors one day.
Nice.
And I had this preconceived notion in my head that authors had to be 40 in order to be published, because that was all I like really saw, you know? And I didn't think anything of it. So that was good for me in my writing journey because I took risks, because I never thought I was going to be published at 19, 20, 21. I thought, you know, I'm collecting lived experiences. I'm practicing my craft. If it happens, it happens, but it doesn't need to happen. And that was the mentality I had throughout my writing journey. So that's why I started on Wattpad. I wrote a thriller novel. And it was so bad. It was awful, but it did very well because I think it was one of the first thriller novels on Wattpad to feature an all Indian American cast. And I think the Indian Americans on Wattpad were like, this is cool. I kind of want to read more about it, even though it's not great writing. But I learned a lot from it. And that's like my trial run baby is what I call it. I sent it out to publishers, sent it out to agents, got a lot of rejections, was told to kind of spend more time on my craft, which makes sense. I was 16 when I was doing all of this. But then I had a beta reader who read it and was like, you know, I did not like this book. It was not good. But the reason I finished it was because the romance, the secondary B plot, actually kind of held me there. You have a talent. Maybe you should write romance instead.
Nice.
And my mentality was, I have nothing to lose. I'm not going to be published for another 20 years. Let me write a romance novel. And that was KISMAT Connection. So I wrote it in the end of my senior year into my fall quarter, my freshman year of college, thinking nothing of it. It took me 3 months to draft, and I like sped run that draft. It was just my favorite book. I was pouring my heart onto the page. It was really easy to put my entire to it. And then the pandemic happened. Came back home from college with my family, super far away from all my friends from college. And I was like, well, what better thing do I have to do than edit this book and send it out to publishers? Again, it's the pandemic, and I have nothing to lose. It's not like I'm going to be published. And then I got an agent in 2 months. And then I thought, you know, me and my agent will probably take some time to revise this. We revised in 2 weeks. And then she was like, I think we're ready to go out on submission to publishers. And I was like, this, you know, publishing takes forever. That's what publishing is known for, like just being slow. And so I was expecting a 1 to 2 year submission journey. I was expecting actually KISMAT not to sell. And there were points in my journey, which we can talk about a little bit more if we want to, where I was genuinely convinced this book was not going to be my debut. But we sold in 5 months. And so then I got my book deal the night before my organic chemistry final, which I then bombed, and I just got a 40% on it. But I was totally fine because the night before I got a book deal for my debut at the age of 19, and the rest is history.
Nice.
Thank you.
Great. So the fact that you said you wrote it within like 3 months, do you, because like I know how school is, do you think there was a good distraction so you're not as stressed as you're doing in chemistry, you hear her. So like, do you think it was a good distraction to help you ease your anxiety and tensions from school?
That is exactly why I wrote this book in 3 months. So I think a lot of the time people ask me the question of like, how did you balance it? But the thing is, it didn't feel like balancing. It didn't feel like I had these 2 extracurriculars and they both needed work. It was like, this is something I love so deeply. I love writing. I had no intentions of it becoming anything big. It was just something I did for myself. So whenever I wasn't in school, I was writing and I was putting my like time and effort into it just because I wanted to develop that side of myself. And so that's how it happened in 3 months. I think when that's all you think about, you kind of push out the words a lot faster too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
So speaking of being a writer, what is your experience on becoming a Generation Z writer?
Yes. So one good thing of being a Gen Z writer is no one ever critiques me on the way I write dialogue, which is such a like good thing when you go on Goodreads and like people tend to be mean on Goodreads, but like that's where they critique. Like that's your place to write your review. But everyone that has critiqued KISMAT Connection has never said the dialogue sounds unnatural. And I think that's because I'm a Gen Zer writing Gen Z characters. I was in my senior year of high school writing these 2 characters in their senior year of high school. So a lot of the conversations they were having was very similar to what I was having with my friends. And that voice and that the way they carry themselves and the way they speak, it's not dated in certain like Gen Z abbreviations. Like I wanted to say like slay in my book, but like that's already outdated now. It was not outdated in 2019, and I'm really glad my agent was like, please don't put this in your book, like take it out.
Okay.
But like the way Gen Zers talk and the way they phrase their sentences is something that you only get as a Gen Zer.
Right.
And I think adults can see it and they can understand it really well from like looking around it. But I think that because I am speaking that way every single day, it came out into the book really effortlessly.
Which is great. Like, because as an educator, my students still say things. I'm like, what does that even mean? So I'm getting schooled by my students with all the slangs and the sayings, and it's great. But so that when I read books that have that, it sounds natural, like you said, because it's the way people talk nowadays.
Yeah, it's like I was talking about Be Real before this started, and I was like explaining it to you. It's a very Gen Z thing, I think, Be Real.
I like it though.
Yeah, it's fun. It's very us, and I think it makes the characters authentic to who they are.
Which is great.
Thank you.
Also, in reference to you being a writer, can you expand on your experience of being an Indian American diaspora writer?
Yeah, I totally can. I love this question. So obviously I'm Indian American, but I am second gen. My parents were the ones to immigrate here first, and then I was born in the United States. So my experience has been kind of towing this line of how Indian am I, how American am I, and like, is the middle ground that I've decided to pick worthy of acceptance? And I think that's what Madhuri and Arjun also struggle with in KISMAT Connection, where it's like, we fall in different parts of this diaspora. We express our identity in very different ways. Are we still worthy of the community that we choose? So for me, at least, I grew up, obviously, 8 years of my life were in Connecticut, and I went to a town where there were not a lot, well, there were Indian Americans, but they weren't in my grade. So I was kind of surrounded by people who didn't look like me, who didn't really understand my food, my culture, the things that when I would go home, I would participate so heavily in. I kind of had to turn it off when I went to school. So I became very good at something called code switching, where I can be, I can be really American when you need me to be, and I can be really Indian when you need me to be. But sometimes I would accidentally code switch in front of the wrong community.
Oh.
And then suddenly it's like, you're not the same person. Why are you suddenly talking like this? Why are you suddenly not like being yourself? But I am being myself. Like both identities are true to me, whether I'm American or Indian. It wasn't until I moved to California in my freshman year of high school where I finally got to meet, more diverse people. I got experience and I got the exposure to the people I wanted to have a community with. That was when I was like, I can be both Indian American. I don't have to code switch, and that is enough.
Yes.
And so, I went to college. I made my first Indian friends. They're lovely human beings, and they encouraged me to not be the perfect Indian American stereotype. They encouraged me to be a human being that was more than my identity. And that's also what this book is. Like, it's obviously being marketed as an Indian American romance because, one, it is, and two, we don't have a lot of those.
Right.
But it's also about they're human beings at the end of the day, and their identity is just one part of the puzzle pieces that make up who they are. And so, like, when you start to see them as more than that, I think you're also starting to get the big point of the book.
Nice. I like that.
Thank you.
As a reader, I mean, obviously there are some, like Nisha Swama, she writes adult romance. And I like, the good thing about fiction or books in general. There are different types of books, and I like how the books are becoming more diverse. Like as I'm looking at these bookshelves in Mysterious Galaxy, you can see how diverse the writers are. And for me, like I can pick up any one of those books and I can fall in love with the characters. And just like in this book, I like Arjun a little bit. I'm sure a lot of people do too.
Yeah, it's a common experience. People like Arjun a lot.
Yeah, he just seems really sweet. And so, I mean, like, I could see why she chooses him to be her experiment person, but also who else would she pick because he's the one that's closest to her.
Yeah, she doesn't bring a lot of people into her life, Miss Mothery. So, like, of course, there's like one straight man in her life, and it's her like childhood best friend. Like, who else is she gonna pick for the fake dating? But also, like, Arjun is such a genuinely kind person. The way I describe him is like you look at him and you just see light, and you know it's genuine, and you know that if you are in his life, you are there for a reason, and he'll do anything for you. And I like, who wouldn't want that as your boyfriend, right? Like, that's whether she's conscious of it or not. Like, I think she was like, this is a good man, where if this family curse turned out accurate, it would be okay.
Awesome. Would you say in this book, do you identify or with any of the characters, or were they inspired by real life people?
Yeah, so this book is like has a pretty heavy hand for inspiration by real life people. Like I said, I was 17 writing it, did not thinking it was going to be published. So there's a lot of things that I wrote that I was like, oh, let me just like totally self-insert my parents into this book. And like down to the names, like my dad's name is Dave. The main character's dad's name is Dave. Like it's very much inspired by it, but I did not want to self-insert myself as the author into this book. I feel really passionately about readers being able to feel represented by characters in their own unique way, and they would not be able to do that if I was just 100% on that page. Like I just don't think that could happen. That genuine connection wouldn't be there. And two, these characters have a mind of their own, and they have ways and like actions that are totally unique to who they are. That's maybe not something I would do, but there are bits and pieces of their personality that come from me. And so a big one is Madhuri. She's a STEM girly, just like me, super into science, super into logic, and she's also a little bit guarded, like how I was when I came to love. But also like me, she's willing to open herself up to it if you prove her wrong. And Arjun does. Arjun goes out of his way every single day to prove to Madhuri how much he loves her and how much he won't leave. So at that point, like she's willing to love you. She's willing to put down her walls. And I think that is something she gets directly from me. But the rest of her is totally up to audience interpretation. Like it's very much, she is a character with her own mind, her own brain, her own livelihood, her own passion. And, I just added a sprinkle of me into that.
That's great. I like it. I like it a lot as a reader. I like reading books where authors do, like, yes, if they are characters are from their own perspective or experience, that they make the characters not vanilla, but as palatable in a good way so that people can identify with them rather than, oh, she's Indian American. I don't identify, I don't relate. Maybe not, but you do identify with being an American, going to high school and going through these experiences.
I think that's a big part of it, right? Like we don't have a lot of representation for Indian Americans just yet. And it's kind of like people are comparing Madhuri to Devi from Never Have I Ever, which is like pretty similar. But, there is only one Devi right now. There's not really anyone else you could compare her to at the moment.
Yeah.
And like I love Nisha Sharma's books. I love Sandhya Menon's books. These are all authors and like Alicia Ray that have really defined my like reading taste, have defined what I consider representation in a book. But they did that by creating characters that are real, characters that are more than their identity, so that readers pick it up. And like you said, they have a story that they can root for without it being so like separate. It's like just a representation story, right? So I kind of picked up a lot of my inspiration from those authors.
Nice. So, who are some favorite writers of yours? I know you just mentioned some, but any other writers that you grew up with that you would say, you know what, this book was so good. Everyone should read this book.
Yeah, I can go into more detail about the authors I also picked. So Sandhya Menon is a really big one for me. And When Dimple Met Rishi actually came out in 2017, and it was the first Indian American romance I ever read. And it was the first Indian American romance where both love interests were Indian, right? That joy was at the center. There was no apologizing. that they were both from the same culture. I was 15 or 16 reading this book and thinking, I want to write that one day. Like, I want to be so unashamed of who I am and who I love that I write a whole book about it, you know? So Sunday Maynard was really important for me. She was also, I think, the first Indian American romance author, YA romance author to hit the New York Times bestseller list. Like, she is my inspiration for like the field of representation as a whole. So I love her. I shout out her books to literally everyone.
I met her.
You did?
Yes, I met her at Y'all West.
Me too.
2018?
I met her at Y'all West 2019.
Yes, maybe that was it. And this was right after I read Twinkle.
Twinkle is so good.
Yes.
Y'all should like totally read her books. It's incredible.
Yeah. So she was amazing. And not just kind of like how you are. You are the way you are. You're not just some writer so far away. You're like, I'm present. Hey, I'm here. I do have a life.
Yes.
I thought you write books. And so that's how I felt when I met Sandhya.
Yeah, Sandhya, she's so great. I have a story, like when I met her, I was like, oh, you know, my thriller novel got rejected everywhere. And she was like, you know what? Like, your voice matters. You email me whenever you want and I'll give you the encouragement. She held up to that. 16-year-old me emailed her like this long crying message about like, everyone rejected my book. And she saw back in 2 days, like, I believe in you. Write the next book. And if you write a romance novel, let me know. And I told her when I got a book deal and she congratulated me. So like, I love her. She's a wonderful human being.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
I do have other authors if you want to get those too.
Yeah.
I could talk about this for hours. But I'm a big Olivia Blake fan. My friend Mehreen over there, she got me into Olivia Blake. But I just love Alone with You in the Ether. That is my favorite book of all time. I recommend it to everyone. I have never seen a character that has like the flaws that she has, but can also be loved for it. Like, I think that's the common theme in everything that I write and everything that I read. I like flawed characters that are still deserving of love. Yeah. Because I think that's very reflective of us as human beings. Like, we are not perfect and we still get love. We still find love in all these different places, right? Yeah. So I love that book. I love Olivia Blake. And I also love Sajni Patel, The Trouble with Hating You.
Oh, I love that book. I mean, there's unfortunately there's an abuse in the beginning, right?
There is.
I remember that. But overall, and like I met her too.
Oh yeah.
She was at Y'all West last year.
Okay.
She was like, the story was amazing. Like, it was her debut book, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like such a good book. If you haven't read The Trouble with Hating You, you should. It's really good.
It's just like, that is representation also that is not afraid to take a stab at what's wrong with our community. And I think Sajni Patel took a risk with that, in the sense of like, you run the risk of alienating readers from your community because they're like, oh, we don't want to talk about this, hush hush. And like, sometimes the Indian community does have a little bit of this thing of like, let's not talk about this on a public level. But it ended up finding the people it needed to find. Like, there are Indian Americans that have experience with things The Trouble with Hating You talks about. And to see it on such a broad scale, to feel seen like that is so important. And I also like started to put that in my book too. Like, we should talk about what's wrong with our community so we can fix it. Right?
Yes, it's like a mirror, but not really like judging you. It's just like, hey, this exists.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. Let's be better with the next generation so it doesn't happen.
Which I like that.
Yeah.
Any other authors?
I think Ali Hazelwood, Christina Lauren. I'm shouting them out as well because they also blurb KISMAT Connection, which, like, let me just say, I put them down as like, these are authors who like would never read my book, but I'm like just citing you the name, editor at my imprint. Please just like let them know how much I love them. The first person to get back to me about blurbing was Ali Hazelwood. Within 30 minutes of receiving the email, she reaches out and she goes, I have been thinking about this book since the book deal came out. Thank you for wanting to send it to me. Super awesome. Sweet. First to turn back her blurb around with this very nice like paragraph that ended up being on the front cover, right? A warm, stunning, heartfelt debut. And then she also had an extra paragraph just fangirling about Arjun. And I'm like, that's how I talk about your books. And you're talking about me like that. Yes. And then Christina Lauren, I actually met them for the first time at Susan Lee's launch event for Soulmates. And when I told them about my book, here.
You were here? We were all here.
We were all here. It was such a fun launch event, wasn't it?
It was. They need to do more events like that.
Oh, yeah.
You hear that? You hear that? More events like that.
But yeah, I was here and I met Christina Lauren because I was like, oh, I'm big fans. And they were like, wait a minute, you're a debut author. We know you. And I was like, My book is KISMAT CONNECTION. They're like, we've heard of it. And my editor, Claire Stetzer at Inkard Press, was here from New York. And Christina Lauren just like calls out to Claire from across the room and be like, hey, can you send me Ananya's book? And then Claire's like, you got it. And then they became a blurb. So I love them. I love their books. And I'm just happy they took a chance on me.
Yay. I was going to say, I just met them. I've met them before, but I went to San Antonio for their event at Book People.
Yes.
And Ali Hazelwood was there too.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. Like, I like the fact that they did blurb your books because as a reader, I like fangirl on all of them too because their writing is so succinct. It's so amazing.
Yeah.
The fact that they blurbed your book was incredible. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Yeah, I was so happy about it too.
Nice. Okay, what kind of music do you listen to, or was there any music that you listened to while you were writing this book?
Yes, I have a KISMAT Connection playlist on Spotify that's like curated for the book. My sister, I told her to listen to it when she read my book for the first time, and like certain songs would come on at the exact emotional beat that I intended them to be there for.
Nice.
And she was like, oh my God, I'm crying in this plane because like the song just synced up with this chapter. And so I feel very proud about that Spotify playlist. I put a lot of time and effort into it.
Nice.
But I listen to a lot of Taylor Swift.
Awesome.
A lot of Taylor Swift.
Are you going to see her?
Already saw her.
What?
I saw her in Vegas and she was
What?
incredible.
We're going to see her in LA very
So
soon.
fun. That's exciting. She's
Yes.
fantastic. And she has like a song for literally every scenario possible. So like
Yeah.
there's like 3 Taylor Swift songs I have for every book, and there will continue to be Taylor Swift songs for
Which
every
three
single
for
book.
this one?
It's Nice to Have a Friend is obviously like the go-to one. That's such a cute song. I love it a lot. Willow, because
Love
there's a
Willow.
lyric that's like, wreck my plans, that's my man, which is very Madhuri and Arjun, I think.
Yeah.
And then the third one is Delicate, because I think that
Love
Madhuri thinks like how Delicate sounds, where it's like, is this okay? Is this cool? Like, are you going to break my heart if I love you? And then Arjun is the same way, so it just kind of goes back and forth there.
Hey, all right. I like that.
Thank you.
It's amazing like how like even her music it can apply to your books in your situation, which I like because that's what makes her a great writer.
Yeah. I think when there's like a shared experience across multiple medias, it's always such a good feeling. Like you write a book and you think that this is just something you're feeling or something your character is feeling. And then you hear a song and you're like, I'm not the only one that had this thought. We're just phrasing it differently. It feels great.
Nice. So how do you feel now that you're a published author?
I feel great. Oh my gosh. I was super nervous leading up to this, and everyone knows, all my friends know at least, I was sick for the last 3 months, just with any possible random sickness anyone could have had. I had it because I was just so nervous about, this book deal. And I think when things happen so young, you start to feel like a little bit of like, is this all I have in me? And then you just get proven wrong. Constantly, like
Good.
People coming out to this launch event, supporting me, like my team, like putting in so much effort into me, letting me write a second book with them, just kind of showing me that you're not a published author because you just have one book out when you're 21. We're going to give you the opportunity to keep writing books, to keep being a published author. So now I'm kind of filled with all the love and gratitude and like excitement in the world. And it feels great to have gone from super nervous and putting all this pressure on myself to not be a one-hit wonder to kind of being like, no, there's more for you. Like you have it in you. And like, now this is your job that you can have for as long as you want.
Which is great. I was going to say, like, one thing I like about your book is you're hooked from the first page. It's not like a lot you have to like wait for first 25, 30 pages to really like identify like the characters. First page, you're in it.
Cute. That's like the nicest compliment ever. Thank you so much.
I was going to say, because like, if you look behind us, there's so many books out there. And why waste your time on books that don't like appeal to you? And I feel like this book appeals to me as a reader. And I'm glad you're here. And I'm glad you are sharing your talent with the world.
Thank you so much. I feel really proud of that first page too, because I'm the kind of reader where my attention span's also kind of like short. So when I read a book, especially when it's romance, I kind of want to know as much as I can about the characters as soon as possible. I want to know who I'm rooting for in this love story. And so chapter 1, I made sure that a lot of effort went into that when I was drafting, because it starts with Arjun. It doesn't start with Madhuri. And it's Arjun already talking about how deeply connected he is to the Iyer family before he gets his astrology reading done.
Yeah.
And I think like you're starting right before the book kicks off, but you're learning so much about him already that's why people also like him a lot. He's very open about himself on the page.
Which is great. Speaking of, another question, what does KISMAT mean? Because it says KISMAT connection. I want to know, and I'm sure the readers probably want to know, what is KISMAT?
Yeah, of course. So Kismet, I think, has multiple meanings in different cultures and different backgrounds in India. But the way I always grew up with it is that Kismet means destined, or like this is something the universe has set out for you. Okay. So a Kismet connection is like kind of our way of saying written in the stars. Like this is a connection that is fated, a connection that is destiny. You cannot run away from it because it's meant for you. And so it just feels perfect for these two because the whole book is her trying to run away from her Kismet connection and her mom being like, stop it. It's not going to leave you. You can't just run away from it.
You guys were destined. Hello.
Yeah.
You can see it. They are destined. Oh, she had the sign. Hello. People show up at the sign of the game.
Oh, yeah.
Like, come on. You can do it.
She's like, as much as she's a STEM girl, she went full cheerleader for that man. She like, I don't think she fully knows how much she loves Arjun for the majority of the book. And then she does things like that. She wrote a sign with like acrylic paints with his like name on it and is like standing there cheering in a like crowd. That's like not something you would do for a lot of people, right?
Yeah, and not to say that she's an introvert, but you would think for her to actually do that at a public place like that says a lot about her.
And she's definitely an introvert. Like Madhuri is not someone who likes talking to people. Madhuri thinks most people are out to hurt her. Like that's her view of the world. She's a little bit pessimistic in that way, but she'll do anything for the people that are in her life. She doesn't have that many people to care about. So the ones that she does, it's like all in. And even though maybe she doesn't fully see Arjun romantically in the beginning, Arjun is her best friend. And she will do anything to make him feel loved in that platonic context until it changes, of course.
Until it changes. I just thought it was really cute that she did that. So is there anything else you'd like to talk about? What were you eating when you were reading this book? Because I like food, and especially like when it's from a culture different than mine, I want to know what the characters are eating.
Yeah, so I don't eat when I write. I'm a very like neat freak kind of person. So like there cannot be crumbs near my keyboard. There cannot be anything that could possibly ruin the fact of this Word document being here. I'm also scared of like drink spilling and like destroying my computer and suddenly 30,000 words are gone. So I don't eat or drink when I'm writing. And I typically write and like read in the middle of the night as well. Because remember, I was a college student doing all of this. So I would like study until 10 p.m. and then I'm just writing until 2, 3 in the morning and my appetite isn't really there as well. But I did eat a lot of Indian food when I was writing this book. I think it was just in my head, right? Like I was talking a lot about being Indian and I would crave my mom's food, but I would be at college in my dorm with like a microwave that like 50 people in a hall share. There was like no way to get Indian food, but my parents were so lovely. They would drop off Indian food to me every weekend and like would go out of their way to buy my favorite foods. And they're like, here, it's for you, piece of our hearts. And I would totally take it.
Oh, but give me details. You're saying food. What should I eat? I want to eat. What should I eat?
Hyderabadi chicken biryani. That is my favorite food. That is like, it is my favorite. It is spicy. It has layers. It has multiple different like aromas and like, I just cannot express how good it is. You should go to Paradise Biryani Point in Artesia. Artesia is our little India here in Orange County. Okay. It's like near LA. I think it's part of LA County actually.
You hear that? When we go up there?
Yeah, I go there quite often.
Isn't their biryani so good?
Yes.
It's fantastic.
That whole row of shops and restaurants is really good.
Yeah, the Hyderabadi biryani is really good there. And then also like pav bhaji is a staple. It's a Mumbai street food. And Honest in Artesia sells the best pav bhaji ever. Like people are like nodding because it's just so good. This is a common experience.
Take me. Because we go to some of my good friends are here, and like we go to a lot of book events.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, take me.
It's on the way to LA. We can go.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Definitely recommend it.
And then I'll let you know what I think.
Yes, please do.
I probably will love it. So just let you know. 'Cause I will eat anything as long as it tastes good. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
I think we're at a good point where we can do some audience questions.
Audience
Thank you so much,
Perfect.
DJ.
No
All right.
problem.
We do have some online questions, but we'll give it to our in-store first. So go ahead.
I have a two-part question.
Sure.
First one was, Do you think you will pursue writing as a full-time career, or will you continue to do STEM in parallel as well? And my second question was, can you tell us anything about booktube?
Great questions. All things I love to talk about. So I don't know if I mentioned this, but I am going to medical school in July. So I will be pursuing a career to be a doctor, specifically a gastroenterologist. Thank you. I am really happy about it. So I have always seen writing and medicine as two sides of a coin that like is me, right? I don't think my writing feels genuine without the STEM and without the medicine like influences that are very clearly in this book. And I don't think I would be a good doctor if I didn't have a place to openly communicate what I felt, and that is through writing. So for me, I don't think, even if I had the financial ability to be a full-time writer, I don't know if I would be. I don't think my books would be the same. I don't think they would be genuine to who I am and to what I love if I'm giving up something that I love as equally as I love writing, and that is medicine for me. So that's question number one. As much as I would love to, I don't know. Like, I think it'd be great for the first 3 months. Then I think I'd be like, I want to go see a patient. I want to go do like the other thing that I love so much. Second question is, I do have a second book coming out in 2024. So like in a year, actually a year from right now, it should be out. It is not a sequel, but it does feature the main character's younger sister from KISMAT Connection in her own love story. And a big thing, thank you. I'm super excited about it because my publisher basically said, you're allowed to write this like Ananya literary universe where the characters are all connected and they're all having love stories with the same theme of you can fall in love and it can feel like magic, literally. So my second book is about, Reina Iyer in a time loop with her ex-boyfriend at a Bollywood dance competition trying to figure out how they want to fall back in love while they try to break a time loop. And I think it's like second chance romance. There's a lot of angst there, but it's just my publisher's really letting me edge into what I love most, which is magical romances. So I'm excited to get to write that.
That sounds amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, speaking of that, there was a time loop book I just finished by Robbie Couch. I don't know if you've read it.
I haven't, but I've seen it. I've seen it.
And so it's like, if you like time loops, this will, telling you, I'm excited for that one.
Thank you.
Does it have a title yet?
It does have a title. I've been like slowly soft launching it, so you guys get to hear it. It's called Sanskari Sweetheart, and in Hindi, Sanskari is a very like sarcastic way of saying like a well-behaved Indian woman, in the sense that like you don't like typically if you're called Sanskari, it means that you are timid, you are quiet, you do not speak out even when bad things happen. And nowadays, I feel like Reina, especially as a character, is the exact opposite of a Sanskari woman. If you make her mad, she will tell you.
All
and
right.
she kind of like holds it as like, yeah, I'm a Sanskari sweetheart. What are you going to do about it? Like, that's kind of her entire vibe this whole book. So
Okay.
that's the title.
Excited. So excited.
Thank you.
From our online audience, what did you find to be the most difficult part of the writing process?
That's a good question. Okay, so I think I have a lot of trouble with drafting, actually, in the sense that the story plays out perfectly in my head. It's so cinematic and it's full and all themes and the characters are there. And then I get into this like little perfectionist mindset of like, how could I possibly write this in a way that does justice to the story in my head? And then it turns into no writing at all. And that's actually what happened with my second book, where I was so caught up with it needs to be perfect, like how the final draft of KISMAT Connection looks, and it needs to be exactly what I see in my head, that the second book just didn't get written. I asked for 3 extensions from my publisher, and it took me in December, 2 weeks away from my deadline, being like, I need another extension, and my agent being like, you have to finish it. Like at some point, you have to just sit down and trust that if you could write a book once, you could write it again. And I ended up writing my second book in 2 weeks. I submitted it on time, thankfully. But it's just like drafting for me is a very difficult part of the writing process. It was a very general answer, but just it's hard to write 70,000 words of a book and to do it, in a way that feels true to you, in a way that feels genuine to your writing style and to your voice. So that would be pretty difficult, but I'm working on it. I started plotting, to make it better. I was totally just writing for the sake of writing before, but it's a lot more structured now.
Awesome. And she failed to mention that she did this while she's in school, by the way. She's graduating. So
yes, I did do it while in school. 2 books in school.
Yeah.
As a fun one, which character from KISMAT do you think you'd be best friends with if you were in the book?
Yes. So I think a lot of people expect me to say Madhuri. I would not. I don't think I would like her. She's too much like me, and it would be like holding up a mirror to my face, and I'm not in the mood to be confronted with all my flaws every time I talk to someone. So me and Madhuri probably not be friends. I think we'd see each other a little too well. But I think I would be very good friends with Josie and with Raina. Like, little known fact is that Josie is based off my best friend in real life, and Raina is based off my little sister. And those are the two closest women in my life outside of like my mother and my grandmother. Like, those women have really shaped me into who I am today, and their friendship means the world to me. And I think that those are the characters I would also be friends with too. Like, they're so sweet and understanding, and they are not afraid to have difficult conversations to help make the friendship grow, which is a big thing for me.
Nice.
Is there a significant way your book was changed from the first draft to final? If so, what was it?
Yes, I call this my Jenga block revision. Basically, my mom's like laughing in the front row right now. So my editor, I went into this publishing process without actually revising this book a lot. So the second draft of KISMAT Connection is what got the agent, and the third draft of KISMAT Connection got the book. And so then there were a bunch of drafts in between that not a lot of people hear about, right? And it's the ones I did with my editor, who is the smartest human being ever, Claire Stetzer. She's just incredible. And she sends me this like 6-page edit letter when she first signs with me. And I remember thinking, wait, I thought my book was perfect. What are you talking about? But she brought up some good points, which is that the pacing of these character arcs are fine, but the pacing of the romance was feeling a little disjointed because I was so focused on these characters, I forgot they were supposed to be in love. So my big revision, the Jenga block revision that I was talking about, was I took apart the book chapter by chapter, put it up on a whiteboard, and actually actively moved the chapters around. Chapter 18 became chapter 3, chapter 4 became chapter 36. Like, that is the level of revision we're talking about. And I procrastinated on it because I was in school. So I did it in 48 hours before it was due with like 6 energy drinks and no sleep. But it got in. That was the biggest revision. And then I did a bunch more revisions after that, adding scenes to help make the romance feel more deep and more genuine, and then just kind of like fleshing out these characters so they're less like characters and more like real human beings that you can resonate with, right? So I ended up around draft 9 or 10 by the time you got this book today.
10 drafts. Wow.
Yeah, they weren't all like Jenga block drafts, but there were a lot of versions of this book on my computer.
And I like how you said that, because from your brain to the final or to the published version, there has to be so many changes in order to make this happen. And I'm glad you stuck with it and didn't give up, because it was sometimes got hard.
Yeah, thank you.
You had a beautiful book.
Yeah, isn't it? The cover is so gorgeous, right?
Yeah, absolutely gorgeous.
Fun fact about this cover. So I'm Tamil American. So Tamil Nadu is a state in India. It's in South India, and we don't get a lot of South Indian rep in the media as much as we get North Indian rep. So I'm Tamil. Madhuri Iyer is a very like a traditional Tamil last name. So Madhuri is Tamil, her family's Tamil. And the artist for the KISMAT Connection cover is Tamil, which makes this, I think, the first book ever to have a Tamil author, a Tamil illustrator, and a Tamil main character. And I'm really, really happy with it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Now I'm like wondering, I want to look up India and figure out where all this stuff is. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. I'm really proud of that. And the artist is incredible. Johnny Balakumar is like lovely. And I think she's also designing the second cover. So
Awesome.
I feel very lucky to work with her.
And how, speaking of covers, how much say do you have in the final cover?
So every author's like experience with their cover, with their publisher is very different. I got lucky that InKyart is so receptive to my thoughts and my feedback. And so they let me have a pretty big say in this cover. I picked the artist. So I found Johnny Balakumar on Twitter, and I was like, I love their portfolio. Can we sign them? They signed her within 24 hours for this book. And then, you know, with this, I asked her if she could do this kind of concept where they're holding the contract in their hands. They're in front of the Griffith Observatory, which is a big symbol in this book. I love the Griffith. I spent a lot of my high school years there.
Awesome.
And I even got to say, like, I want them to be wearing Indian clothes on the cover. I don't want them to be wearing American clothes, because it matters to me. Like, a big part of this book is embracing your culture. They should embrace it on the front of the book too.
So what is she wearing?
She's wearing a lehenga.
Okay.
It's green and gold. It's just absolutely beautiful. But it's actually the lehenga she wears when she goes to like Arjun's family member's wedding in chapter 10 of this book. And that's the kurta that he wears, and it's like matching in color to her. They have the same gold accents and everything.
And what about the head?
I like have the word in Tamil. I don't have
Nethi chutti.
Nethi chutti in Tamil,
Awesome.
Mang tikka in Hindi.
Okay.
Yes.
So what is it?
It's just like, I think, a decorative element, right?
Like a necklace.
Oh, we
Yeah.
like to accessorize.
Yeah, we are big into our accessories.
Awesome. Cool. And bracelets. So I'm asking all these questions because I don't know, and I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I mean, when you see covers, there is a reason why characters are wearing what they're wearing, or for instance, the
Jumki.
accessories.
Yeah, the jumkis are the earrings. That's like my favorite. There's a scene in the book where her jumki falls off, and Arjun goes and like looks for it. He's like on his knees, crawling on the floor, trying to find this golden earring, and then he's the one that puts it back in her ear. It was a very romantic scene that did not exist until the final draft. My editor was like, let's like up the romance a little bit here, and that's how that scene came to be. But like the cover has all these important elements because you can't have an Indian outfit with just a lehenga. Like the accessories matter, you know, the way they do their hair, their like makeup, everything is just very much like, I'm going to an Indian wedding, I gotta look the part, and I'm happy the cover did that.
Have you ever worn anything like this?
I have a green lehenga. I used
Green.
to wear it in my freshman year of college, and it looks just like that.
Awesome. Cool, I like that.
Thank you.
Any other questions in person? Otherwise, I got plenty more online. All right. What is a personal belief or trait that you wanted to instill in your character's personality or demeanor?
A belief trait, okay, that I wanted to instill. I think I'm going to talk about Madhuri really quickly here, because I think her belief is that you cannot believe in anything if you don't do it yourself. And she ends up learning or unlearning that kind of mentality of like, there is a little bit more to life than that. And there's also a level of trusting that the work that you put in gets you where you need to go. And that sometimes there is like otherworldly forces and luck and destiny that can help you get what you want, right? So a really big belief that Arjun has, that Madhuri starts to believe towards the end, is everything always works itself out. Whether you realize it or not in the moment, it will work itself out. The universe is on your side. You just have to believe it, and you have to do your best, and everything will fall into peace. And she's so adamantly against that belief that eventually she ends up meeting him there.
Oh, okay. I like that.
Thank you.
So related to that, another fate question. How did you define your version of fate? Was it difficult to limit that definition?
Yeah, oh my gosh, these are fantastic questions. The people online are like really coming in with it. Okay, so for fate, I think people tend to believe fate as like this huge, scary entity, this hand that can just like, no matter what you do, whatever fate decides for you, that's what's going to happen. But I don't really see fate that way. I see fate as, you know, maybe you are destined for something in particular, but it doesn't mean it's not malleable. I think you get a say, and you get a pretty big say in how your life ends up, and fate is what helps you get there at a fast-tracked pace. So that's kind of how I see it. So for example, I don't know if it was necessarily always my fate to be an author, but I do think that I loved writing so much, and I put in my whole heart and my whole effort into it so consistently throughout the years that eventually I made it my fate. And now no one can tell me, like now people will say, we've known it since you were a kid, like this was your destiny. But in the moment, no one said that to me. It was when it ended up happening, and you look back in hindsight, you're like, that was destiny, that was fate. But no, it was hard work, it was effort, it was putting something into the universe and hoping that it would spit back exactly what you wanted. And that, I think, relationship is what fate ended up becoming in my life and in this book.
Awesome. I like that.
Very nice. Okay, we got time for a couple more questions, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Because I want to ask all of them, but so is there anything that got cut from the book that you wish made it into the final print?
Yeah, so there were, I think, quite a few scenes that were actually cut from the book. The biggest hit was actually, I spent a lot of the book writing about Madhuri's relationship with her parents, because that is something that means a lot to me in my own life. So of course it came out in this main character, right? Like she wants to spend all her time with her parents. They're her best friends. And then it started to stop being a romance novel. So then my editor was like, I know it hurts. Like, I know you have to kill your darlings here, but we need more Arjun and we need less of Madhuri's dad. And so my dad always gives me like crap for it to this day. He's like, you cut me out of your book. You don't love me.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, for the sake of the romance novel though, like it matters. I have to write more kissing scenes, sadly. And that's what took up the space in the chapters that were cut out that were more family oriented.
And she will be writing more books. There's more chances for you to show up.
Yeah.
That's fair. Time to reuse.
Yeah, it's true.
All right. Last one. What advice do you have for young aspiring authors hoping to start their craft?
I love this question so much because I think when I was young and when I was writing, I had this like mentality of I couldn't do it because I was young. And then when it did happen, it felt like I was beating the odds. But the thing is, I don't really think of it as beating the odds. I think of it as if you put yourself out there and you put in the work to make your craft as good as you think it needs to be for you, eventually someone's going to see it regardless of your age. Writing is one of those things that is more than your identity. It's more than your age. It is more than your race, your class, your creed, anything, right? You write a book that feels true to you. You write a book and you work on your craft to that level, people will notice. And I think that's what happened to me, right? I didn't disclose in any of my queries when I was starting out that I was 18 when I was sending this book out because I was scared, right? Someone would see 18 and not even give me the time of day because they think I'm just kind of shooting into the dark a little bit with this book. But I would, if I go back and do it again, I would say that I was 18. I would take pride in the fact that I put in this work to get here. And it's not a race by any means. I think whenever you get published, like you will get published, and that is the perfect time for you. But if you are young and you want to be an author, my biggest advice is don't stop. Like, don't let people tell you you're too young. Don't let people say you have to get a certain number of experiences to earn being an author. That's not true. You are a human being with a story to tell, regardless of the age that you are. So write it. And, make sure that you keep that unique voice that sets you apart in this market, because that's what's going to get you your book deal. It's going to be your voice and the fact that we don't have it and someone out there needs your voice. So as long as you remember that, push forward, I think you'll make it. At least that's what I tried to do, right?
That's so wonderful. All right, everyone. I want everyone, both in store and virtual, give another round of applause for Ananya.
Thank you.